apologize for the short notice. Was the International Flat Earth Anthem by Lucifer Tim. Look at the Sun. Let's see who is in the chat here. Frank Murr, Restless Bear, Maxwell Cooper, Jay Roberts. I didn't send out phone notifications. I ran out of credits. Usually it stretches to the end of the month, but we were exceptionally busy. But I will be refilling that as soon as possible. And that's the text alerts. We're up to like 140 now. We're trying to get to 300 people. The more people who sign up, the more it costs to send out mass texts, but it's 100% worth it because we just hit play and instantly dozens of penguins are huddled up, conspiring. Tricky Who says, "Hey Tim, I heard someone shelling in Ukraine." Shelling or shilling? Shilling for the PSYOP Entertainment Complex. It's all fireworks until I see something that convinces me otherwise. The burden of proof is not on me. So let's go ahead and start with the main topics. Pluto rising. Oh, no, Pluto returns. I think I put in the notes it's Pluto returns. So let's start with that topic. We talk a lot about the Great Reset. So this topic of Pluto returning to the point where it was during this nation's founding. That's the significant part, which we'll get to. In other words, 1776. The last great conjunction, the one that occurred on the winter solstice, was a callback to basically year zero or so. That's the last time we had the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction on a winter solstice. And it makes perfect sense. A great reset with such a rare event, an event that previously is associated with year zero. I mean, how much more great reset do you get than going back to zero? And after that, there was another conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn, albeit not on a Christmas, not on a solstice, but that one was around 1620-ish. I think 1623 or something. But I find it noteworthy that right now the main debate, the main thing on the world stage, well, one, great reset. It's basically year zero. But which direction are we going to go? And I think the crossroads we are at is, are we going to go 1776 or 1619? I think that's the split that they've given us, and we'll get into that because I think this is the central schism. These are the lines that they put to divide the nation. There's a very specific line. There's some divisions they set up, all intentional, all engineered. When I say civil war, I don't necessarily mean one side kills the other and there's a winner. No, I think more like a perpetual gridlock is what I mean. One side always hates the other. Sure, half the side is rallying for freedom, but the other half is behind the government that doesn't want that freedom, and vice versa. And, by the way, nobody's wearing masks anymore over here. Just all of a sudden, because I guess some politician said so. And so I'm like, well, the next agenda, as I've been saying, is global warming, climate change, lockdowns, etc. So I thought, well, why not take your masks now and just put them over your car exhaust? Let's go ahead and cut down on global warming. There's as much science behind the meme on the screen, where there's a medical mask over a tailpipe, as there is on putting a medical mask over your face. As in, it's not, obviously, we all know what this is. It's theater. Zareth the Alchemist says, "What does Tim Stradamus see in the near future?" Yeah, let's talk about Tuesday, which is a special day because of a few reasons. Kanye West put up a billboard, ominously. It says 2222222, and it's got a house on it that's on fire. And of course, Kanye West actually had himself set on fire at his Dawn Day release party this summer. That's on the day they usually do the Burning Man festivals. Well, the Burning Man is the phoenix. It's the same symbol, and so it's not insignificant, the timing of these mass rituals. Nor is it insignificant that the house that he burned had a cross on it, and it looked just like the chapel where the Rust shooting happened, and where the majority of the action at Westworld happens. All these things are connected. It's all about burning down Western chauvinism, as we'll get to. So Tuesday is highly significant because of Pluto returning. So let's talk about that first. Also, thanks Misha for this tip in the Discord server. It's 222 years since George Washington's death. George Washington, by the way, his birthday is officially February 22nd. Admittedly, they adjusted it and made it that day, but there you have it. Also, the month started out with an event in the Twin Cities, and think two twins, doubles. This is all significant. So in the Twin Cities, on 2/2/2022, a 22-year-old was killed by the police in an event which mirrored the George Floyd psyop. His name, a mirror. His last name, Locke, which pertains to the situation of no knock warrants, where the police unlocked the door. The mirror emphasis really comes from the timing of it, that they put the key in the lock at 6:48 a.m. 9 seconds later, they shoot him. Well, 6:48 is a mirror of 8:46, the time that initially they reported that they were kneeling on George Floyd and the whole 8:46 movement. And 8:46 is the exact time that the 9/11 events kicked off with the first plane hitting the tower. 8:46. That was actually the time Mercury was rising back in 9/11/01. My point being, 8:46, 6:48, I think that there's a mirror, as in another 9/11ing of America coming. Now, his father, the father of Amir Locke, or the PSYOP actor, whatever you choose to believe, because none of us know. I mean, we have a better idea here. I can say I know it's a PSYOP, but could I prove it? I think so. I think the burden of proof is not on me. But anyway, the PSYOP father said, well, my 22-year-old was killed on 2/2/2/2, blah, blah, blah. Let's have 22 days of peace. All this numerology is witchcraft, or something. Let me see who's here in the chats. We're joined by Jay Roberts, Jenna Lovecraft Reeves, OB Ninja, who says so ready, Cubstar 322, Brogetta, Portal Complex. By the way, yes, it is a Tuesday, and Zareth remarks that Tuesday is the god of war. It's true. When is Fat Tuesday? And again, yeah, Tuesday's Mars, Monday's the moon. And I happen to think that the Black Monday market crashes that were spaced 33 years apart in some months, I think that the Black Monday market crashes are related to the moon. There's some kind of connection with the moon and the moonfall and a coming market crash, which we'll also talk about that. I have a lot of notes here. But again, Tuesday's a big deal because of this. This is why Tuesday's such a big deal. And this is the biggest news of the day, aside from the fact that some psycho didn't hang himself. So, U.S. Pluto return 2022 to 2024. And why is this significant? Well, the last time that we had this precise alignment was 1776. So that alone is a big deal. 1776 is also the height of the One World Trade Tower, which ties into this, because what we're really talking about here is this new agenda and how it's been planned in advance. And look, listen to this. Astrologically, a Pluto return is when the heavenly body returns to the same position in a birth chart where it was when the chart began. It happens every 248 years, meaning this is the Pluto return in the United States since the country was founded in 1776. This February 22nd marks the date when Pluto will enter the same exact degree it was in on July 4th, 1776, which was 27 degrees Capricorn. So yeah, on Tuesday, it will be where it was on July 4th, 1776, which happens to be 27 Capricorn. Now, who is Pluto? I guess that's probably the next thing to get into. Pluto specifically relates to Hades, the god of the dead. And this is where I think it's getting kind of interesting, because for the last few days we've been talking about, well, you know, dead dogs. Like our president bragging about how he once left a dead dog on someone's doorstep. And then we had this video, ominously, if you ask me, of Johnny Depp talking about killing his dogs. I'm like, what is going on here? Well, then I'm looking at Pluto and Pluto returns, and I'm reminded of this. On the face of Pluto, you quite literally have, and Pluto was discovered in like 1930, and we have a flat solar system, So you can laugh at flat earthers all you want, but we have a flat solar system with the exception of really Pluto with its 17 degree. Here we go. It's 17 degrees below the ecliptic or above, depending, but take a look at this face. Tell me that's not the same face. And we've pointed out that the moon of Saturn is obviously the Death Star, and vice versa. We live in a Disney universe. But here you are looking at Pluto. Again, Pluto returns on Tuesday to where it was July 4th, 1776. So I've been thinking about this. I remember Aleister Crowley used to say something about dogs. He said, quote, "Is a god to live in a dog?" And this is some kind of bizarre reference to the dog star and also to this idea that they encode a lot of their occult language just by writing it backward, because they know that regular people like you and I don't read things backwards. We don't hold things up to the mirrors. We're not inclined to be doing any of these strange things that these occultists do, but they hide these things in plain sight. So they don't worship the dog, but the dog star, Sirius, has some significance, and it's related to, well, a few different things, the constellation, but all of the various occult secret societies pay homage to Sirius, as do you, every New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve is when it reaches its highest point in the sky before it falls, and you celebrate it with a ball drop, celebrating Sirius. So anyway, got me thinking, well, maybe there's some connection here. So Pluto is the Roman form of the Greek god Hades. Hades is the god of the dead, king of the underworld. Pluto is the Roman king of the underworld, god of the dead. So they're basically the same. Pluto is just Hades, just more Roman. So I'm thinking here, if the god of the underworld is returning, if Pluto's returning, perhaps these bizarre stories about dead dogs could be a reference to this. I mean, maybe I'm reaching or connecting, but I don't know. Just too many dead dog references. I thought you might find that interesting that, yeah, Pluto is returning on Tuesday. And Pluto the dog is literally on the face of Pluto. Isn't that amazing, though? I mean, I read somewhere, too, that Walt Disney was a stoner and that Goofy is actually based on his persona or his how he acts or how he is all the time or was. Pete Shea is here, says live, no way. Nope, we're not. This is pre-recorded. Crater Earth USA says, hey, penguins. You know, I found an interesting reference to the phrase Crater Earth, which I'll dig up later tonight. And I believe it was from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I'll get there. Linda Curtis says 2222 is adding to 10, which is also a reset number. Right. Well, anyway, Crater Earth says you're never reaching. Well, whether or not I'm reaching or whether there is a connection or not, the fact is Hades, Pluto is coming back. And the planet Pluto is represented as having a dog's head on it. And there's a lot of talk about dead dogs in high places. Just the usual. Yes, Pluto returns 2022 to 2024. Now, there's a really good Twitter account I've been following. And he has some very good ideas, or a pretty good idea about this Antichrist script being put into play today that seems to point at Trump. But yeah, I think that there are stories, there are narratives that are encoded into many of these world stage characters. And you could almost make the case that Trump is fitting in to a certain role, very antichristy. Let me go ahead and find this one. Okay, yes, Donnie Darkened is the Twitter account. And I have a few breakdowns that he's done on the persona of Trump, on Donnie Darko, and other things. Here's what he said. Donald Trump is the chosen Antichrist. They have been foreshadowing this for centuries. Here's the proof. Now, what I found here, what I find interesting is he has a great breakdown of the Pluto returns. Again, kind of a surprise. Yeah, on Tuesday, Pluto will be in the exact place it was, the same degree, 27 degrees Capricorn, that it was on July 4th, 1776. Again, 1776, a big year for the Illuminati. Have any of you guys heard about this thing that Adam Weishaupt, founder of the Bavarian Illuminati, might have been George Washington himself as a deepfake? I've heard this I've also heard a few other things. Andrew says, I did not get a text. Yes, I ran out of text credits. It's actually expensive. Well, it's not cost prohibitive. It's worth it. But towards the end of the month, I tend to run out. I will purchase more credits tonight. If you want to support the channel, click ko-fi.com/Tim Osman, and any art purchase goes to the maintenance of this channel and all of the bells and whistles. Okay, so we're going over to Donnie Darkened and a few other topics. Look at this too. Look at the screen. What do you see? I mean, I see a few things. I mean, I see things in images like this, like when I paint or I draw or I look at the clouds. I don't find it hard to tap into that. They may call it what, apophenia or whatever, when you see things. I don't see things or believe things to be there, but I tend to notice, well, shapes, objects, arrangements, and I think I'm good at picking out subliminals. So if you're looking at the screen, it looks to be the Twin Towers and a few other things, but mainly I want to focus on what looks to be the Twin Towers. Is anyone in the chat here in agreement with me? The Missing says Twin Towers. P. Trippa says testing 123 IPS is the place to be. Okay, so again, 9/11. Everyone here says 9/11. So you're all seeing Twin Towers. You're all seeing 9/11. Just checking. Because what you're actually looking at is an image from futurism.com of the space station. An article about how the space station will go down in flames, as I've been saying for a couple of years. And I've been suggesting that it's a space 9/11, and the iconography, the symbolism, it's all aligning so that when you see it go down, it will be compared to 9/11. So I have a couple things to add to this. One, when Notre Dame was burning, the YouTube little bar on the bottom, the warning bar, the misinformation warning notice, it said, be careful, this is 9/11 conspiracy theory. Well, no, it was a real-time event of the spire, the big tower at Notre Dame burning. And again, it looked like they were intentionally making this into a 9/11 event. Now, there's a few interesting connections here that we made at the time. A lot of interesting connections, in fact, with the Templar Knight inside, the bee habitats on the roof with 60,000 bees in each, 60, 60, 60 that survived, that in the first 66 minutes, which is what they said that they had to go in and rescue artifacts, a fireman who happened to rescue people at Bataclan, at that Eagles of Death Metal shooting, went in and rescued the actual crown of thorns that Jesus Christ wore when he was crucified. A lot of stuff around this event was clearly scripted. But anyway, I'm pointing this out here, just how this was a very 9/11 event. And when people saw it, they made this instantaneous association. And YouTube, inadvertently, I think on purpose, labeled this as 9/11. So what I'm getting at is that, and if you really want to go into the space station 9/11 connections, we've gone into this in depth. Even if you break down ISS, 9/19/19, or 9/10/10, or 9/11, it's all highly encoded. Even Our Lady is analogous to ISIS or the ISS. The burning of the cathedral, I contend, and did at the time, is a foreshadowing of the burning of the ISS. In fact, when the ISS was going over, they reported it's burning but not destroyed, and they were talking about how they could see from space the bee habitats on the roof. Well, what's the significance? The original symbol for the Illuminati, even the Templars, they used the beehive. So the bee habitats survived the fire, like a phoenix. Well, the Knights Templar themselves were burned at the stake, but then survived the fire. And it's not insignificant then that during the fire, a Knight Templar was actually seen in the cathedral. And of course, they were the financiers of the cathedrals. So again, this is all just pointing out that the Sky Temple is analogous to this temple. And this was all, or it's all part of an ongoing protracted ritual, and this event was associated with 9/11 at the time. So here we are looking at the images of a burning space station as represented by futurism, and it's indistinguishable from 9/11. Again, it's their art, which I'll put on the screen. I'm getting used to this though. I mean, we're all getting acclimated to imagery of stuff falling from the sky, but how many times have you seen in the last 6 months to a year, not coming from us anymore, images of the space station blowing up or burning? Like, it seems like everything that happens when it comes to major transformative psychological operations seems to require a great deal of saturation of the public imagination first. Again, we'll talk about the sicko that did hang himself if anybody's interested. Also, apparently Bob Saget has that wound, or he was wounded. He was bludgeoned on the back of the head, and they said it was the headboard. So apparently he doesn't know how to use a headboard because they say he was hit multiple times on the back of the head. What does that mean? And then you have Heather McDonald, who fell after bragging about her triple vax status and hit the back of her head. And we've been saying we need to get mandatory helmets for all of our triple vaxxed friends. Hey, if you got a goo blood friend, you just reach out and give them a helmet. But there's a pattern here, is just what we're saying. And I believe the family is trying very hard to prevent us from, or prevent the media from getting any of the autopsy information. So, like, what is really going on here? Okay, I'm just going through some headlines really quick. See, look, they said a massive asteroid the size of the Empire State Building was going to hit the Earth on Friday. Well, here we are on Saturday. Didn't happen. They also said that the piece of space junk that's going to hit the moon next month is actually from China, not from Elon Musk. So I guess they did a little rewrite on that script. That's amazing. Also, and maybe I'll play this. I'm going to play this really quick here. Flat Earther claims NASA is pushing a belief in ET so that when Jesus comes back, we'll shoot him. Now, that part is true, but you got to hear this. Kelly Whale, writer of Off the Edge. This is the Flat Earth deep dive she did. She really did do her research. She spent years among the flatties. She knows anybody who's anybody in this topic. Anyway, here she is on an episode of a podcast called QAnon Anonymous. And what she says here is that you can tell the Earth is flat. I mean, curved, rather. She says you can tell it's not flat by looking at the horizon. I'll let you hear what she has to say about it and then we'll respond. But again, this is a very highly educated journalist who spent years among flat earthers.
Because it looked just like a straight line. He would take a telescope and go wading in there and look for it and say, oh, I can see people or I can see boats well past where the Earth's curvature should obscure them. He would lay down on the ice during winter and say he could see ice skaters at the end of the canal and he shouldn't be able to do that. We can pretty much attribute this to him lying.
So she's talking about the Bedford level experiment where it involved viewing ice skaters way down the flat canal and seeing them when they should be over some curvature. But this, again, she's saying is a result of a lie. But now listen to what she says. This is Kelly Weil about what you can do to determine for yourself that we're on a ball.
Mistaken, because everybody can observe the Earth's curvature over a couple miles. It only takes a couple miles for the Earth to curve about like 8 feet down, at which point you wouldn't be able to see an ice skater. But that didn't...
Okay, so it only takes a couple miles for the Earth to curve down 8 feet to cover up an ice skater. 2 miles, 8 feet. Interesting amount of curve there. So you can tell she either hasn't thought about it or she's been fed some lines and she's just not even going to address it. Because there is no way you could arrive at 8 feet of curvature in 2 miles. So anyway, how do you spend 3 or 4 years up to your neck in flat earthers and arrive at that? Very suspect. Zareth says the IPS are not conspiracy theorists, we're conspiracy spoilers. Yeah, I don't really traffic in conspiracy theories. The mainstream media does. There's this big one. What do they call it? Oh, yeah, climate change. A few other ones. I think one of their conspiracy theories kind of went out of fashion, so they brought out another variant of it. I was complaining the other day, they had the HIV variant out, And I still have my Omicron decorations up. You know, it's like the public attention span isn't long enough to sustain any of these psyops that long. I figured this would be the case. They're going to have to dress it up somehow. Okay, so anyway, let's continue. Boston Globe covered this. So it's talking about, yeah, Kelly Weil. If you want to know more about the book, it comes out on Tuesday. So another thing to look forward to on Tuesday, if they don't blow up the internet, if the McVeys don't knock down all the 5G towers or whatever, if life goes on as normal, you can get this book on Tuesday. It says she found out they were dead serious about their belief that the Earth rather than the globe, or the Earth is a disk rather than a globe. She says this, listen to this. Various strains of flat Earth theory posit a ring of ice at the circumference or a giant dome above it, or trippiest of all, an endless plane. So she says it's interesting, I guess, or noteworthy that they're dead serious about their ice rings and domes, but the trippiest thing of all, an endless plane. What makes that trippier? I mean, you have infinite universe. What's the difference between an endless flat plane and an endless flat universe? Which it is an endless flat universe if you go by their science. So it's like endless flat universe. Ooh, science. Endless flat plane. Trippy. YouTube's looking at new ways of stopping misinformation from spreading online, like removing the share button and disabling links. So I'm thinking, you know, one way that YouTube could just stop is just self-cancel already. Just YouTube should just delete itself, delete all of its videos. Make it so you can't even watch videos. You just upload them and then get banned. YouTube should just change, I don't know, their whole approach, their memory holding anything decent. Their whole function, I think, is to censor maybe community generated content. They want to make sure that anything we have is out there so they can censor it. I mean, they're so heavy handed with it. And they give themselves awards for free speech. I mean, they're totally way past saving. Listen to this. I mean, YouTube is, to me, it's the only thing about it is their chat. If they didn't have the best chat function, I would have no use for them. So their CEO says, listen to this. YouTube CEO Susan W. received a quote free expression award from the Freedom Forum Institute in a ceremony sponsored by YouTube. The tech CEO discussed the platform balancing people's right to free speech with protecting the community from harmful content. So that's really the line, though. The thing is that they're protecting everybody else. It's like quarantining, I guess, is what their function is. And I actually think that's next. I don't think they're going to blow anything up. I don't think they're going to blow up the internet because they want to sell you stuff still. I think what they're going to do is they're going to lock down the internet so that they can, well, purge certain ideas and memes. Are you all familiar with the butterfly effect, which is probably a hoax? This idea that a butterfly flaps its wings and causes or somehow results in a gust of wind on the other side of the world or a hurricane. Nonsense. Like the 100th monkey effect. Nonsense. But anyway, now they're applying that to memes. So you tweet a meme here, you could cause a war over there. That's kind of where they're at. Got some good news here. Joy Behar might wear a mask in public indefinitely. Now, it's too bad they don't count being on TV as being in public, as in like on the stage with everybody else. But yeah, Joy Behar will be wearing a mask in public indefinitely. Who else should? Rudy the dog says double speak is now the observable reality. Yep. Kevin says YouTube was awesome until Google bought it and wiped the 9/11 videos. Oh yeah, I have a friend who had many 9/11 videos from World Trade Tower 7 from the earliest available footage. Millions of hits. And a couple of years ago, they went behind the scenes and just silently deleted his content. So that's what's going on. Flat Bastard says the Mandela effect is as dumb as the Mandela effect. Ooh. Yeah, the Mandela effect is like Flat Earth's ugly cousin. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to defend the Mandela effect. I mean, I don't hate to say it. I mean, I don't like debunking other people's religions. I debunk the news. I debunk the fake news, the de facto state religion, because it's inherently dishonest. So I don't take any pleasure in rug pulling the Menduzold who believe they're experiencing the supernatural, having amazing synchronicities with corporate logos like McDonald's and Wendy's and Walmart and everything. It's like, okay, maybe it's just clever marketing. I never heard of Chick-fil-A until the Mandela effect. But let me go ahead and play this. Maybe I shouldn't. Yeah, I will. Here's the thing. The whole Mandela effect would be better to be described as the Ed McMahon effect, because most of the people who are admittedly Mandela affected were born after Mandela died or after he was released. They just don't know the history of Nelson Mandela. So what they tend to gravitate to as their go-to isn't Mandela effect, but really the Ed McMahon effect. So they point to Ed McMahon. They say, well, we all remember he worked for Publishers Clearinghouse, and he was passing out big checks with balloons and giving money to random people. So I've been asking, well, where are the people who receive these big checks? Because if you're going to say that Ed McMahon used to pass out big checks and reality changed and now he doesn't anymore, well, then you need to explain, well, what happened to all that money? Where are the people who grew up rich off of Ed McMahon money? Like, where are the people like, say, yeah, my great grandmother won a big check. So I've just been saying that's a tall burden of proof. Can you supply something more? So anyway, Thirst for Truth did some deep digging, and he found plenty of videos where Ed McMahon is clearly working for American Family Publishing, not Publishers Clearinghouse. And this matters. This matters because the main reason, I guess, would be if he didn't work for Publishers Clearinghouse, he never handed out big checks. Let me play this clip. So this is Ed McMahon and Richard Simmons and American Family Publishing. And I think
Fridays, because Fridays are a day of celebration here on Dreammaker. That's because it's the day we announce.
Now again, it's a little sped up, but that's just to get through it faster because we are talking about the Mandela effect, and I promised a few people we wouldn't talk about it anymore. But we have to until it's totally. Here's why. It needs to be understood. I think it exposes something. There's educational value in reverse engineering the Mandela effect, and it's this. The eyewitness effect, faulty eyewitness testimony, the interrogator bias, these are all important things to understand when it comes to perception and how memories are formed. So you can do a lot. You can to advance your understanding about short and long-term memory and recall and memory storage by studying the Mandela effect. But is it a viable conspiracy theory, or rather is it an alternate explanation for events? Not really, because we have evidence that Ed McMahon didn't work for Publishers Clearinghouse, and here it is. Here's the evidence.
Here on Dreammaker. That's because it's the day we announce American Family Publishers Sweepstake winners. To help me introduce these very fortunate people, please welcome American Family Publishers Dream Correspondent and my friend, Mr. Ed McMahon.
There you are. You had the dream. That's right. Now, here's the important thing. Now, there are a lot of sweepstakes out there. Yeah. I'm with American Family. Let's not forget.
There are a lot of sweepstakes out there. I'm with American Family. Let's not forget that. So he makes it clear. See, what happened was American Family Publishing and Publishing Clearinghouse were competing. They had commercials at the same time. People associated this old white guy with that old white guy and assumed that they were recollecting Ed McMahon driving around picking up checks, and it's a common misperception, but it's been explained. So anyway, there you have it. There is no Ed McMahon effect. So now what? How many legs are left on the Mandela effect to stand on? I can't think of any. Did Timmy fall down a well? Everybody knows Timmy fell down a well. No, I'm sorry. But I won't accept the premise that Timmy fell down the well and everybody knows, because everybody knows the Earth is a globe. That's not good enough. I need to know, how did Timmy get out? How did Timmy get out of the well? Here's some more accelerant. Derek Chauvin was joking while restraining Floyd. Zareth says Joy ain't scared to sit with her elitist friends and say she's going to wear a mask when she's on a bus, like that bee ever rode on a bus. Oh yeah, I see your point. It's all posturing anyway. They say they're triple vaxxed. I won't believe it until I see their craniums hit the ground or smack the headboard. Okay, let's see. Ottawa insurrection has roots in pro-pipeline, pro-fossil convoy. Yeah, sedition, insurrection, where have we heard this before? Seems like a big setup. Okay, now the article I mentioned, or rather the topic of the butterfly effect, the article's from Scientific American. The essential guide to the most awe-inspiring advances in science and technology, explaining how they change our understanding and shape our lives. Dangerous lies fuel a new kind of butterfly effect. So we're talking about, of course, misinformation. And in this case, there was an event, the North American Butterfly Association became the target of some QAnon protesters, associating them with human trafficking, that kind of stuff. Again, anything with QAnon or any of these groups doing bad things and being reported on, I tend to think we're looking at agitators and PSYOP actors. And the real QAnon is being hunted, and we'll get to that here shortly. TikTok star Huey Haha, cause of death revealed. 22-year-old. Just another. I have a mind map of all these conspicuous 22-year-olds dying in the last 6 months, starting with Gabby Petito. And then we had the 22-year-old who died earlier this month. So we may get into this one, but these high-profile deaths are always suspect and worth examining. How Dante Wright led a life of crime and violence before his death. Another PSYOP event, hoax, whatever you want to call it. So it's good news, it's a hoax. Nobody died, nobody cried. This was the individual who was pulled over for having an air freshener. The story ties in with the George Floyd event, as it was just a few streets away, and his teacher was George Floyd's girlfriend. It also occurred on 63rd Street, which I found noteworthy, given that this was shortly after, or before, Derek Chauvin had been released from Hennepin County when he was out on bail. And I remember thinking, they let Chauvin out at 11:22, a very Oswald number. So I was actually on the lookout for some reference to 63, as in 11/22/63, to tie into the George Floyd event. And sure enough, we do have this kind of twin event, and it's the Dante Wright. We will be going into these various events in detail. I'm actually working on a mind map connecting a lot of these. Some anti-cop or anti-government creeps, this is from Wonkette, were arrested at the Trucker Palooza raid, plotting to kill cops. And I'm looking at their arsenal displayed on a table, looking like stock photography. Not sure if I buy it. Not sure if I believe it. It looks like something cops would do, to point at their opposition. We're joined by Thinks He's a Penguin 101 and Zin Vallis. Get on the newsletter, you won't miss anything. Text message notifications will resume in the next day or so. Yeah, QAnon founder may have been identified thanks to machine learning. So using machine learning software, computer scientists believe they've uncovered the identity of Q. So I looked into this, and they found someone, not Ron Watkins, but someone close, but not close enough. We all know who Q is, but I've taken this opportunity to reach out to every author of every piece covering this story, because he's being hunted. So if you want to help on the objective here, on the quest to unmask Q, go ahead and go to these articles and contact the writers and share what you know. marcusgoldfinch.icu if you go to that website, marcusgoldfinch.icu, it will take you to a breakdown of who Q really is. Pete Trippa says, Tim, wasn't JFK assassinated on a date that it's mirrored or has mirror numbers? 11/22. Now let's see. Let's see. 11/22/63, which is also the date that Kubrick's movie was going to come out, the Doctor Strangelove. But the 11/22 thing, 63, kind of tied into the George Floyd thing in another way. You had the Floyd being, of course, 46. Kennedy was 46. And the 9/11ing of America is what I've been calling it. But it's not just about 9/11/01. It's about these major league psyops, and they all have the same code. In fact, if you really want to get into the code and numerology, which I don't care to do, but you could say that JFK, look at their numbers, 10, 6, 11. You could kind of flip that and get 9/11/01, or you could even get, in a way, 6/11/01, which was the date of McVeigh's execution at the age of 33. I mean, the JFK assassination is a staple in conspiracy theory circles. Everyone likes to talk about it. I find most of these theories to be kind of boring and fake, more or less, maintaining the integrity of the idea that a president was assassinated. And I don't think that is the case. I think it was a psyop. But I think, moreover, it's relevant today because JFK Jr. is the savior in the QAnon narrative. It's not really Trump. Trump works for JFK. In fact, many QAnoners think that Donald Trump might be JFK Jr. in a fat suit. That's how far gone they are on the Kool-Aid and hopium crack. And I don't think there's any helping them. Zareth says Floyd and Chauvin were employed at the same club as security guards. The crisis actor casting department went lazy on that one. Oh yeah, we've exposed this ad nauseum. There's almost no point. If you still believe it, you're just a believer. And we could go into detail about this event. And in fact, it's fun, and I wouldn't mind. I mean, just deconstructing the Western chauvinism, kneeling on BLM, and this whole thing is, it's a major story. It's in our zeitgeist. It's encoded into so much, but there was some sloppiness on their part. Yeah, these two guys work together. It's like, I'm sorry, but you're going to kneel on his neck over a $20 bill. And here's some code for you. Twin Cities, Twin Towers, $20 bill. 20 means twin tens. On the back of the 20, folded, you get the Twin Towers burning. Counterfeit 20 is another twin. And of course, after Floyd died, he was referred to as a twin. And by the way, this Twin Cities, in the Twin Cities on 5/25/2020, the sun set at 8:46. Again, the time that 9/11 started and the time that Floyd kneels on him. And this is also significant because the setting of the sun represents the death of the sun god. So you're looking at the ritualistic killing of a Sun King ritual, which is why they put George Floyd in a golden casket, very much like Osiris. Encoded into all these rituals. In fact, last month, at the end of the month, there was the death of, was it Chesley Christ, the beauty queen who jumped from the 29th floor of a building called the Orion, which is another reference to Osiris, landing on 42nd Street. I mean, Black Queen, Osiris, 42nd Street. This stuff is deep. We'll go into all of it, though. That's what we're here for. Deep metascript analysis. Thank you, Not Cute Claptrap, for the support. I will reinstate text message notifications. Now, a couple other things about the Derek Chauvin Floyd thing. Yeah, the 9/11 connection, the $20 bill, the twins, they worked together. And then after the fact, there was a coworker who claims that Floyd and Chauvin had a fight over a paycheck, and later he had to retract his story. You could tell he was embellishing and lying. One of those crisis actors who realizes that this is his time, that this is his big break. And you see some of these crisis actors where they go off script and they're always laughing and smiling when they do so. But anyway, they scrubbed his story. Derek Chauvin's neighbors thought he was a real estate agent. How does that happen? There were also some other stories like money laundering at the club that happened to burn down that night, and that Floyd was somehow a weak link, and that the fake counterfeit $20 bill was connected to that, and Chauvin was put there to silence him. I've heard some interesting stories, but the main thing is, yeah, it was a major league psyop. I can't breathe, an anagram for a better China. I happen to think chanted, I think it's a verbal sigil. Okay, let's see what else. NASA, oh, Nick, the NASA pimp, says they switched the rocket that's going to hit the moon in March to a Chinese rocket. So now it's China's fault. Originally, they said it was a 4-ton Falcon booster. Now, it's going to hit the moon just as Moonfall comes out. Don't Look Up is out. Every other Netflix show is about the sky falling in one form or the other. By the way, I can't breathe is also applied to climate change. I can't breathe because of climate. I can't breathe because the oppression from the police that uphold the capitalist system that causes the climate change. You see how all these things are connected. It's not me. I'm just pointing out the obvious. These aren't conspiracy theories. Pete Shea says, haha, Tim with the fat suit joke. Oh, not a joke. They actually think that JFK Jr. was wearing the Donald J. Trump costume at that rally, which wouldn't shock me at all. Space Monkey Mafia says, what about 50 Cent hanging upside down at the Super Bowl while his neck chain medallion upside down as a 20? I'll have to look at it. So upside down it looked like a 20? I thought there might be a corona connection there, like a bat hanging upside down, but yeah, I'll look into it. There's nothing here that they do that's accidental. It's all scripted. And I hate bursting people's bubbles about these gangster rappers, but a lot of them are just actors. And there's a book by 50 Cent. Well, it's by 50 Cent and Robert Greene called The 50th Law, and it's an extension of the 48 Laws of Power, where it's the 48 Laws of Power interpreted through the lens of an aspiring gangster rapper. And it talks about how there's a famous incident where his tracks were leaked. He was so mad he overthrew everything in the office, threw the table over, broke a window, and scared all the record executives because the tracks were released early. Well, later it came out, or at least he talked about it in his book, that never happened. That they wanted these tracks to leak to help album sales and to build up hype. That people will go for a leak faster than they'll go for a release. So they intentionally leaked it with that fake story, a psyop, just like the news does. Okay, let's see, going through your comments. Rich Flat says, Tim, could you play the F.E. Fokker video again? It does sound like him. Yeah, let's go over to that. So, Mac Parhar, aka Mac Sexton, or Waynel Parhar, what are we going to call him? Mac Sexton? In honor of, if you didn't know, Waynel Sexton is like the all-time great, she's the GOAT of crisis actors. She's been in four at least, I think 5. I think I found her again. Waynel Sexton has been at 5 different major psyops. She's been in, what was it, Orlando, the disco shooting. Then she was over there at the Vegas event, Thousand Oaks. But anyway, she most recently has turned up as the teacher of George Floyd. She saved his artwork from when he was a second grader or whatever. He had the Liberty Bell and he wanted to be a judge. And the whole story, it's pretty obvious. Were it not for systemic oppression, he would have been a judge. And then you have the bell, the Liberty Bell with the crack in it, which, by the way, was cracked in 1846. There's your 846 again. There's your crack, your split, your schism. Probably not a coincidence. Anyway, I've compared Mac Parhar to Waynel Sexton because after dying as a flat earther of COVID and serving as a bad example, in fact, I found this noteworthy. You can anagram Mac Parhar into Pharmaca. Pharmaca as in, well, one, he's going against Big Pharma as this public anti-vaxxer, coughing and spitting out his window, taking ivermectin at the advice of Dr. Joe Rogan. But pharmaca is also what the Greeks referred to, how they referred to their human sacrifices, the scapegoat. So he kind of was a scapegoat, a sacrifice, an example of how not to do things. His existence made into an example. It was just too well scripted. So let me play this clip here. So here is an individual, an old man, described here as an old man, being accosted by the police. They call him a great grandfather. Ottawa police arrest old man for honking the horn. So you're supposed to believe that this man here is not an actor, that he just wants to honk his horn in solidarity, and the brutal police are accosting him. And the anonymous cameraman, described as an anonymous bystander, records it and chastises the police. Now his voice is identical to that of Mac Parhar. So let me play this first.
That's right. He's a supporter for Canadian freedom. Who cares? They shouldn't live in the capital of Canada then. They better leave. Because until the mandates are ended, this is not going to stop.
Sounds just like him. And we have a new suggestion for the name. Because he went by the name, well, Flat Earth Fokker, as in meet the Fokkers. I used to call him Flat Earth F word just to troll him. He would call in until I started asking him for evidence that he was actually a yoga instructor. I'm like, supposedly you're a yoga instructor and you're setting a bad example on behalf of all of us. Can you prove to me that you're actually a yoga instructor? Because it's very convenient that the BBC and all the mass media suddenly put crosshairs on yogis because they breathe, because they don't believe in Western medicine, turning them into a new target, a new dissident. So I thought, that's odd. Now you have Mac Parhar serving as this example of how not to be, and he's also a yogi who's never been viewed doing yoga. That's pretty big. How many personal trainers do you know that don't have any pictures of themselves on their websites, lifting weights or doing something? So it kind of stood out. So anyway, he used to call in. He supposedly dies. It makes the news because, again, ivermectin, and it happened to coincide with Joe Rogan, Dr. Joe Rogan, giving medical advice to Aaron Rodgers and Tim Pool. Happened to coincide. Anyway, he went by Flat Earth Fokker. So Rome suggests that we rename him Waynel Fokker. All in favor, just put a 1 in chat. I was going to say Death Fokker, but I like that one. Whatever you all want to do. He was also friends. Thank you, Portal Complex. He was friends with Benjamin Orion. Now think of the name Orion, knowing its association with Osiris. He was friends with Benjamin Orion Carlson Coleman. Coleman is also a lantern company. Coleman is also the last name of the guy that stabbed his children to death in the name of Q a month later, 2 months later. Matthew Coleman. But yeah, Benjamin Orion Carlson Coleman burned 3 Masonic lodges on 3/30/2021. They called him the Flat Earth Arsonist, and he said he did it because 33s everywhere in the news convinced him that the Masons are doing bad things, so he wanted to pay them back and burn down some satanic clubhouses. Totally fake story, fake news. 42-year-old dressed in black burning these lodges. It looked totally staged and fake. I happen to think he's probably an insider. Well, it turns out that he actually was friends with Waynel Fokker. So Fokker calls in, and he's like, well, I can understand why Benjamin Carlson burned down the Masonic lodges. I'm like, what? You don't have some sort of middle ground with arsonists. You could kill somebody. You could kill an animal, a cat, innocent life. Over what? And the thing is, we've never heard of this guy outside of his friendship with Mac Parhar. And the only person on the internet that I know of that obsessively talks about Masons and 33s and all that as much as we do is us. And he's a regular caller to this channel. So the fact that his friend burned a bunch of lodges, yeah, very suspect. Going through some comments. Jungle Jim says, what about Crisis Fokker? I like that. Crisis Fokker, that's not too bad. Zereth the Alchemist says that's fucked up. Well, someone said in the TV show or the movie Meet the Fokkers, in that show, it's about someone who's, I believe the guy, the daughter-in-law, or the guy's trying to marry some girl whose father is in the intelligence agencies or retired CIA. There's some kind of intelligence connection there. Space Monkey Mafia says RV is associated with 33. Oh, Russian vids. By the way, that adds to 33 in Chaldean Kabbalistic Common Core Gematria, if you haven't added that together. No, I shouldn't make fun. I mean, I like Russian vids. But it's not Russian vids anymore. Because he's not Russian, I called him out on it, so we changed it to RV Truth. So I'm like, okay, RV Truth. Is that some kind of van life? You don't even have an RV. You can't call yourself RV Truth if you don't have an RV. You can't call yourself Van Life if you don't have a van. So I think he's got an identity crisis here. And then he uses the face of Rowdy Roddy Piper as his own. So it's all confusing. Speaking of Rowdy Roddy Piper, the They Live movie might be worth rewatching. It's a 1988 film about an individual who can see through the matrix. He can see through the media matrix when he puts on the special glasses. Some have posited that the lenses, that the glasses, it might actually be a reference to LSD. I don't know. The main thing, though, is that the world is already in the grips of a mind control cult. And the only way you can see through it is to put these glasses on. Well, I think today we're living in John Carpenter's They Live. Only it's the glasses you have to take off to see through it. Like you're born with the glasses on. That's what I'm thinking. Although the lenses aren't on your face, they're all around you. But what difference does it make? You know, you're wearing the lenses that filter your experiences, that give you this fallacious, false deception, the worldview that they superimpose over the real world, and you're in it until you take the lenses off. So They Live is kind of an inversion, or we're living in sort of a counterpart to They Live. And by the way, John Carpenter was in the news recently about how the world is already in the grips of some kind of Skynet-like AI that is getting man to wipe out man in an environmentally friendly way. So just a heads up, one of the great meta-scripters of our time, John Carpenter, has given us a heads up that the AI is going to get us to wipe ourselves out to minimize damage. 737 says, we live in a panopticon. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not just the cameras and the recording devices and what we voluntarily put out there. The panopticon also consists of every snitch, of every mask cuck, mask Karen, every enforcer of every psyop, every person that says that how dare you consider that person or ask if that person's a crisis actor. They're all part of the panopticon. I consider them to be an extension of the elite. That's why I said that the masses aren't going to be wiped out by the elite. Why would they get rid of the buffer between them and the ones who can see through everything? I'm going to read some nonsense for you here really quick, just so you know what's at the bottom of the QAnon rabbit trail tunnel. QAnon is the Galactic Federation of Light, headed by the higher Pleiadian soul of John F. Kennedy Sr., named Q, and a mix of other ETs, mostly Pleiadians, Arcturians, and a few trusted humans, like Donald Trump presumably, both military and non-military. Q plus is President Trump, and they are already here. So what this means is that the alien invasion is already taking place. It's a battle between light and dark. And I'm only bringing this up because the storyline of bad aliens and good aliens fighting a hidden war is New Age claptrap. And it's been around for a long time. The New Age cult, Church Universal Triumphant, the Doomsday Cult, they taught this exact same thing. And this is important because General Flynn, one of the leaders of Q, actually has the QAnoners praying the prayers from the Church Universal Triumphant, which believed in this hidden war between good and bad aliens, with man in the middle and a few trusted humans fighting this secret war. And they're all part of it. Does it sound familiar? White hats, black hats. This cult also believed in ascended masters, individuals who are so deep in this war that they have to leave the world. Not entirely. So they go backstage and they still fight the deep state, and they're still there. You can channel them. That's another one of the beliefs of this cult. And I think that they reinvented that with this death faker thing, where they're worshiping dead celebrities who might come back and save us. And these dead celebrities didn't really die. They just went behind the scenes so they could fight the good fight. You know, like Michael Jackson to come back and save your children. It all makes sense. Again, if you just got here on Tuesday, this Tuesday, the 22nd, and this is the 222nd year since George Washington's birthday, which is also on the 22nd. This is the 248th year since the last Pluto was on the 27th degree Capricorn, which is where it was on July 4th, 1776. So back to 1776. Could be a big reset day. Pluto is the god of the underworld, Hades. And here's another connection. Another connection here is Gabby Petito. If you look at how she was typecast, she was a Virgo. And the number, she was 22, by the way. Just a heads up, these numbers are very consistent in their storytelling. Gabby Petito was positioned in front of these angel wings on a mural with one leg slightly bent, looking just like Virgo. She was discovered just as we went into Libra. But the story seemed to be the story of the kidnapping of Persephone, who's Virgo personified, and Persephone being taken into the underworld, the second half of the year, the dark half. So I was looking at that story with Gabby Petito, who, by the way, was in a post-Sandy Hook music video, which tells you she's part of the Government Actors Guild, the GAGs. So in this story, I thought, well, she's embodying Virgo, Persephone, going into the underworld, kidnapped by Hades. And, of course, the van driven by Brian Laundrie. Sounds like brain laundry, which it was a brainwashing operation. Not a coincidence. Also, they recently discovered his notebook, the notebook of Brian Laundrie. And in the photograph of the notebook supplied by the FBI, you can see the movie poster from the movie The Notebook, which might have some connections to their story. But anyway, I was looking at the story thinking, Gabby Petito, Virgo, Persephone going into the underworld. And now here we have it a few months later, and look who's coming to the surface. Hades. Or Pluto. So, let's see here. Pete Shea says, let's leave the Wayno fucker behind, please. Yeah. I'm going to ask him to call in. Mac Sexton, if you want to call in, 833-311-1984. Patrick78 says, Tim called out the FE fucker COVID death hoax the day it happened. Now that's an expert. I called it out a week before it happened. I said, Mac Parhar is a terrible actor. And every time he notices that there's a camera watching, he remembers to cough. And he's just road raging and vaping and occasionally faking a cough. He's probably going to die. And he did. He died. But yeah, he was friends with the arsonist, so what can you say? There's no way that you're friends with somebody who's the face of a major psyop and you're not connected in some way. All these crisis actors, death fakers, and compromised federal informants flock together. Jungle Jim says the Great White Brotherhood, the Universal Triumphant, are still very active here in Arizona, Tucson. It's a trap for well-intentioned minded individuals. I have a friend who tithes to them. Yeah, they have a presence here. It's called the Summit Lighthouse. I went there a few times. I mean, I've investigated these cults. You know, it's a good thing that I have this to keep me busy. No, but I used to want to be a journalist, and I did take an interest in investigating a lot of these different groups. Not like I'm trying to debunk or anything, but just I was more interested in the common denominators, the commonalities between these different cults. Are they all the same? Is the New Age movement one basic agenda with many different facets, like a hydra with many different heads? And that's my conclusion, that it is. I don't think you can separate any facet of the New Age movement. I think it's just a decentralized thing, but it's ultimately leading to the Great Reset. The New Age movement is also called the Great Work of Ages, or the Secret Work of Ages, or the Great Work is what Aleister Crowley called it. So the Great Work, the Great Reset, again, I don't even think it's a coincidence that Greta emerges pre-COVID to announce the need for climate lockdowns, and Greta, an anagram for great, because it could be the Greta reset. It's not about the virus. The whole reset has been about changing our economic and political systems to put the health of the earth and sustainability of our habitat first. That's why they're going right back to it. That's why they're telling you, masks off, put them over your tailpipes. Because the new agenda. Mask your tailpipes. Remember, tell your friends. Tell your science-believing friends, hey, the scientist said you got to take your masks and put them over the tailpipes of your cars because we got to cut down on our carbon emissions. And they'll do it too. Just remember to say science. Science. If they say what? Just say science. Cut them off. Science. River of Junk says, hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us, River of Junk. Nobody cares about the junk in the ocean anymore. Last year, on 3/11/2021, NASA dropped the largest piece of space junk ever, not into the bottomless infinite trash can of outer space where you have all the wormholes and black holes and stars. No, they dropped it in the ocean. 3/11/21, 2.9 tons of batteries. Could you imagine how many years, the fines that you would have to pay, the time you would serve, if your company decided, we got 3 tons of trash, let's just dump it in the ocean. That's what NASA did, because nobody cares about the ocean anymore, or the rivers or the islands of junk, because now it's all about the space junk. Just like nobody cares about convid, as Mac used to call it. Yeah, please call in, Mac, or have your friend the Flat Earth Arsonist call in. Bro Jetta says, have you ever been to that Zorro Ranch? You know what's interesting about the Zorro Ranch? You're talking about Epstein? And I have to I'll have to drive a little bit. I actually know somebody who may have been there. I've been there once. I mean, we drove by it. It's here in New Mexico. And I heard some things, and I'd like to learn more. I want to see the 6-foot painting of Ghislaine Maxwell where she's nude and carrying a knife. But no, I believe I know somebody who was a part of that, but I can't say very much because I've just heard some things, and if it's the same thing, it's interesting. Let me think what I could say. Because, you can't really just say all of these different places are necessarily bad, but... Alright, Claptrap says, engines blowing from masked exhaust pipes would be blamed on climate change. Yeah, I figured they would start saying that the ocean levels are rising from all the masks being disposed of and piling up in the ocean. That's the only plausible way the ocean levels are going up. Let me open phones here shortly. I have voicemails actually I have to get to first, but I want to open up phones in case Mac wants to call in. Again, the big news though, USA Pluto return 2022. So if you don't believe in astrology, I don't blame you. But the billionaires do. The trillionaires do. And I can prove that they do. And we already talked about many precise celestial alignments with major news events. We've already talked about these things tonight, and these are the rule, not the exception. So the fact that Pluto, Hades, god of the dead, is going to return to the place where it was on July 4th, 1776 in 3 days is likely significant. Also, the other connection to this would be the 2/22 date has been highlighted as a day to burn houses, judging by Kanye West's Billboard. It's George Washington's birthday. That's also noteworthy. So many other things with that number, but again, Hades, Pluto. Epstein associate found dead in a prison cell. Jeffrey Epstein's pimp dies in a prison suicide. Again, more drama. Don't know if I believe it. Police smashed truck windows, push back protesters on second day of massive Ottawa protest. I've been thinking a lot about this idea. about the protest and whether it's good or bad, or whether I support it or don't support it. It's like, do you support the troops? Well, I don't support this war, but I support the troops. It's one of these things, these questions they ask, like, how do you answer it? Well, I don't think I support this idea of affecting mass change by getting a bunch of people who don't know the whole truth and getting them to line up and sit like sitting ducks for some patsy to do something crazy that can then be used to blame all of you. I mean, did anybody not learn from 1/6? It doesn't even have to be realistic or convincing, and it will have serious repercussions. 1/6 was totally phony, totally a joke, totally a simulation. But if you notice, not even Trump and his crime family are going to call out the fact that Ashley Babbitt didn't die, that Roseanne Boylan wasn't trampled to death. They won't call that out because they're part of it. They're part of the storyline, and it looks like a big setup to me, and we'll see. By the way, I think some Canadians were trampled by mounted horsemen, by Mounties. They should have carried some Gadsden flags. Don't tread on me. Just kidding, doesn't work. As Roseanne learned. There's something trending right now. Blackface Hitler. When I saw that trending, I didn't even have to think about who's that. Does anybody here need help figuring that one out? Blackface Hitler is trending. Nope, not Jimmy Kimmel. Not Jimmy Fallon. Not pretty much every other Hollywood movie star that's done blackface. No, Justin Trudeau. Thinks he's a penguin, says all these twos are terrifying. Oh, they are. They really are. And just wait until Tuesday. Pete Shea says 9 months after 7/20/2021 is 4/20. Yeah, I like 4/20 as much as anybody. You get good deals at the dispensary. But what does that have to do with 7/20? Now, 4/20 was the date that, this is just a side note, that Derek Chauvin was given the verdict, 4/20. And that was 330 days after he killed George Floyd. So you got your 33, 42. There were only 33 people allowed in the courtroom for the Floyd hearing. 33 people for the George Floyd, Derek Chauvin thing. And on the 30th anniversary of the Rodney King beating, you had the George Floyd Act, and they attempted to pass that. This coding is deep. And the attorney that represents every one of the victims in these racial psyops is Benjamin Crump, who's even representing the families from the Bronx fire with the space heaters caused by climate change and social inequity. He's representing them too, and the Astro World. Like, if there's a psyop where somebody said, I can't breathe, Crump is there. And it's not a coincidence that Crump is part of Masonic Lodge 422. Patrick78 says trucker protest is a welcome to communism party. Yeah, I remember thinking Workers of the World Unite is like the start of the Communist Manifesto. This idea that if all the workers could unite, there's this collective power. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm really in support of this idea. Like, after the lockdown started, I liked the initial protests, back when people said it's a hoax, just go back to work, don't believe the lies. But then after that, it became an army of anti-vaxxers running to the state capitals begging for freedom. It's like, I'm sorry, but if you're running to the Capitol begging for freedom, you're already wearing a leash. You're not free anyway, so game over. Should have just gone back to work if everybody did that. Buzz Around says, what happened to Roseanne? Okay, so Roseanne Boylan was there at 1/6 with a flag that said, don't tread on me, and she got trampled to death, which is a hilarious little bit of, writing there, a little comedy they threw in, comic relief. Claptrap says, Ashley Babel's mom made a Twitter 2 weeks before the January 6th event just to get condolences. Oh yeah, they were just new. And what's more, you can find, and I think Pure Blood Princess sent this to me. And I'm a Pure Blood face nudist. Just full disclosure here. Not that I judge you if you're a goo blood. I don't. But there is a Twitter account, I think it was Pure Blood Princess, sent me this image of Ashley Babbitt before and during the trampling. Before the trampling, she had these pants that were stylishly ripped and she had these green shoelaces. During the trampling, she didn't have those pants. So there's no way she changed jeans mid-riot. Moreover, the cop that was just by her feet, face down, was an obvious dummy, as in a rubber dummy. So no, the whole thing was a stage psyop. If the Trumps, if Owen Schroyer, if QAnon shaman, if he's not Owen Schroyer, if any of these individuals were actually worried about going to prison and serving time as insurrectionists, they would call out the hoaxed nature of this thing, but they don't. Sean Hammer says, someone on UK TV described Trudeau's meltdown of late resembling a waxwork dummy in a house fire. Justin Castro. I'm just not surprised by any of it. Like, we know these individuals are fascists. We know that this global fascist takeover has been affected via really the virus, but they're using the pandemic to fast forward and fast track the environmentalist agenda. That's the real thing coming through. Pete Shea says, do you remember William Shatner and Anderson Cooper joking about impregnating the universe? Actually, the word they used was, disgustingly, inseminating space. Yes, William Shatner is going to inseminate space at 90 in the Big Dong rocket, in some bizarre occulted fertility rite, which we talked about last fall, if you don't know. And 42 years prior, he sang Rocket Man at the Saturn Club. That's also interesting, because Rocket Man was up there in space, while down on Earth, he was Knife Man, as the face of Michael Myers in Halloween, the guy with the knife. So Knife Man and Rocket Man existed concurrently. And this is all very significant when you get into the real meaning of these symbols. So the rocket is actually symbolic of the god. And in the witchcraft ritual, the dagger is called the athame, symbolizes the god. The chalice is the goddess. The night sky is the goddess. So the rocket going into the night sky or going to the Kármán line, going into space, actually represents the god and the goddess having their nightly visit. Same thing with the knife in chalice. And then what they do is they conceive the sun for the next day. Like, this is the basic fertility rite as it's represented in Wicca, in witchcraft, and Crowley's ritual, and really in the Catholic ceremony, and also in the NASA rites every single night. And so the fact that he's up there joking about inseminating space shows that he and Anderson Cooper know very well. I mean, this is why the media was joking about Bezos' rocket and what it looked like. Well, it looked like that for a reason. Like, these are not jokes. It is not a joke that SpaceX phonetically sounds like space sex. It's quite literally what we're looking at. It's just an occulted fertility ritual. But, you know, a lot of people can't get that because they still don't know that these Catholic ceremonies or Christian ceremonies, that it's all veiled sun worship. They don't want to go that far. They'll say, well, Christianity is the exception. Okay, fine. Believe what you want. The fact is, it's being phased out and replaced by the space religion, and outer space is the new heaven. Digital transcendence is the new meditation, or the new immortality for the soul. The metaverse concept, to me, it's all building towards this replacement ideology. That's why they gave you your new angry flood god, your global warming. Most of us here, I think, are familiar, though, with the real nature of the space program. And yeah, William Shatner is also significant to be sent up there because of Star Trek and the Final Frontier on Bezos' rocket. Now, Bezos goes to space with a cowboy hat, and then he's seen on Earth having a big party on his mega yacht, on his personal Titanic. The significance here, they're conveying that the billionaires, the richest men in the world, see space as a new Wild West, a new frontier to exploit. And this is going to be contested by the commies, the space commies, which is why they're blaming Musk for littering space and endangering their space station. Apparently, CubeSats almost took it down twice, and CubeSats, as I predicted, have already fallen. 40 CubeSats have fallen so far. Surprised it wasn't 42. They probably didn't want me to mention that. No, but really, 40 CubeSats fell. And we've been saying this is all part of the script. Going through your comments. Salty Siren says, damn, I'm late. Yeah, I'm going to reinstate the text message alerts here tonight. Again, thanks everyone who has been supporting the art store. www.timosman.win. I'll be posting a lot more work there over the next 24 hours. I'm trying to focus the weekends. It's going to be the time when I focus on the art, and during the week I'm just on this. Ryler05 posted this comment earlier today. 2022 is on a Tuesday, like 9/11. Tuesday's Pluto's return. Marty McFly is Tuesday. Interesting. I remember the movie Truman Show. Truman was afraid of Pluto, the dog. Einstein, the dog, was the first time traveler. He returns, and then shit hits the fan. So this dog stuff could be a tell. Okay, now that might be a good point there. You're talking about the dog stuff being a tell. So we're talking about Joe Biden talking about the dead dog. We have the dogs being killed by Johnny Depp. Just this dog stuff we've been talking about lately. It's like, well, the reason why they call Sirius the dog star is that it's heliacal rising, its annual rising above the sun, marked the beginning of flood season, when the Nile river valley would flood. So the dog star was seen as a warner, as in the dog barking to warn you of oncoming danger. So again, yeah, you might be onto something. Heads up. Don't look up. All right, let's see here. Mishka Cat says, I'm Mishka8861 in Disco. Yeah, I appreciate the comments. If you drop anything in Discord, in YouTube, or anywhere, what I do is I clip the comments and I put them on my minds.com account. And the reason I do so is that they delete everything that we do. But Minds never gets deleted. And so I put it here if it's worth keeping, because I've lost way too many comments. Lost literally tens of thousands of very, very insightful comments. Crowdsourcing the best intel. Here is the Terminator. Earlier we talked about John Carpenter, and he wrote the Terminator about Skynet and the AI, but instead of sending robots to kill us, they're just going to get us to kill each other and replace us. So then you have Arnold Schwarzenegger, who plays the Terminator, the face of World War Zero, an agenda that he, John Kerry, and Greta Thunberg are the face of. And this World War Zero is basically a war against you if you're breathing. They got to cut your carbon footprint in half. Does that mean cut your lifespan? What does it mean? Well, we'll see. You know, I'm sure there's nothing to worry about. I mean, we're only talking about a wannabe dictator, a little tyrant, entitled tyrant, by the way, and a skull and bonesman Satanist. So what could go wrong? But here's the Terminator on a meme. Starbucks, after putting a paper straw in a huge plastic cup. Schwarzenegger said, screw your freedoms. That's the last thing he said. I'll be back, and now it's screw your freedoms. But you got to look at the enormous hypocrisy behind all of these different things they advance. It's always symbolism. The mask was always about symbolic compliance to the World War Zero agenda. And that is what the agenda is. It's World War Zero. World War Zero is World War III, is war by the elites against every individual. 2022 is also the year of Soylent Green, and there's a Disney, I believe it's a Disney movie. I think they're behind it. There's something that's going to be the Sundance about cannibalism. And then I think I have an image and a video I'm not going to play of an individual in some Mexican drug cartel eating another guy's heart to scare off rival gang members. And increasingly there's discussion about Astrocrete, and they're normalizing the idea of recycling literally everything and everyone and everybody. Yes, you'll be able to donate blood in space and have it put into the regolith and molded into bricks. Thinks is a Penguin says, hey Tim, I thought about the Kraken and all the word magic with crack being related to Leviathan, some type of summoning the entity of death. And then Pluto returns. And you know what's interesting too is the idea of hell is kind of new, but the idea of like an abyss or an underworld, I mean, there's different forms, but I've seen some suggest that Dagon, as in the Leviathan, the Kraken, is beneath the sea. That hell isn't like under the ground, but it's aquatic. And you look at the stories of H.P. Lovecraft, where Cthulhu and these squid-headed deities come down from space, presumably in a comet, and so it's an ocean that descends from above. And well, our ocean is an alien body, and the Cthulhu Leviathan story, it's kind of the same character, if you ask me. But H.P. Lovecraft had this idea, this fictional universe, that these aliens would have arrived from space in a body of water, like a comet. And the point where these squid-headed aliens landed is Point Nemo, which coincidentally is where the space station is going to be dropped, according to recent reports. Point Nemo is called the Spacecraft Cemetery, and that's also where 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea takes place. Point Nemo. But again, the idea here of a kraken, something coming back to the surface, it's timely. And again, if you didn't know, we started honing in on the kraken as a forced meme being pumped out there in July of 2020 when the NHL Kraken was announced. And it had this commercial with this insinuation of there being a kraken, but also EMP. And it's all about Seattle, the Seattle Kraken, some kind of tidal wave. And this emerged at the time that Sidney Powell was called the Kraken, and she was the attorney that was going to overturn the election. This was at the exact time that Hunter Biden's crack pipe photos were being released. And now we have Hunter Biden's dad giving away crack pipes to everybody to make sure we're all using clean crack pipes so you don't pass COVID on to your fellow crack smokers. Then you have a crack in the ISS. Mike Lindell took over for Sidney Powell fighting the election, and he's a crack smoker. I mean, you can't get away from that term. And I don't think you can even separate crack from Karen. What is a Karen? Just a kraken. I think all these things emerge at the same time. It's word magic. I don't believe in astrology. I don't believe in word magic, but the elite do, and they use it on us. I know it exists. Okay, let's see here. Going through comments. 737 says, I voted for Kanye West. You know, I think Kanye West has a daughter named North. And someone pointed this out to me. They said Northwest could be code because of Kanye's Burning Man ritual and the fact that the Northwest Tower is the name of the Bronx building that burned on 1/9 from the space heaters. 1/9, 19-story building, 19 dead. Fire truck number 42, which is the number of the state of Washington in the Northwest. Northwest Tower burns. And again, started by space heaters, which could be a space war reference to the Space 9/11. Heavily encoded event. I'd like to go back to visit that one. We've gone through there. We've heard all the usual stuff. Even an I Can't Breathe, it's just like a movie. We have a reporter who went over there and checked out the scene. PSYOP confirmed, as far as I'm concerned. Pete Shea says Kraken stems from Alfred Tennyson's poem of the same name, an octopus monster. In The Watchmen, you have a big kraken falls from the sky and lands in New York. 737 says Mandela meets where my bills are paid. You know, I have an idea for that. And actually, I did this a couple years ago and I made some people mad and I stopped. But these days I don't care so much. Maybe I'll start this again. We were making Mandela effect items. So it's like, oh, you say that Jif used to be Jiffy? Well, let's produce some peanut butter and call it Jiffy. Sell it to the Mandela affected as residue. Yeah, this is from another universe. It's from this cabinet over here. I haven't touched it in years. I opened it and it's still Jiffy. Okay, going through your comments again. Salty Siren says the Northwest House in astrology is Aquarius. Now that's fascinating because the New Age, Aquarius, all of this is very well integrated. In fact, the other day we were talking about how, let me see if I can bring this up really quick. We were talking about William Cooper and how at 1313 or 113, again, this is all so well integrated when you get into the symbolism here. We were talking about his Apollo mission breakdown and the Masonic symbolism. And he was suggesting that a lot of the space program ritualization is all about inaugurating this new age. And so listen to this here. All names, missions, landing sites, and events in the Apollo space program echo the occult metaphors, rituals, and symbology of the Illuminati's secret religion. The most transparent was the faked explosion of Apollo 13 named Aquarius, New Age. So you have this explosion, burning fire, in the northwest building. And here we are talking about Aquarius burning. It says 113 on April 13th. Now, I'm going to leave it at that for now. But the main thing is 113. Well, after the Twin Towers burned, the new ones opened up, and the new one opens on 11/3. The Challenger explodes at 1 minute 13 seconds. I mean, what are the odds that the Challenger is going to explode at the same time as this thing? And then you can get to the numerology here. 13 is the number of death, rebirth, reincarnation, sacrifice. Well, 33 years after the towers were constructed, or the construction starts in 68, they're destroyed in 2001. 33 years construction to destruction, kind of like Jesus. Birth to death, 33 years. 13 years after the Twin Towers go down, the single tower goes up. That's 13. And it opens on 113. Another obvious, encoded reference here. Now again, 1776, on Tuesday, Pluto will be where it was on July 4th, 1776. It will be at the 27th degree Capricorn. So we'll be live on that day, obviously. Here we go. Biden recalls putting a dead dog on a Republican voter's doorstep as a young politician. Dead dog references. Again, Pluto, the dog, returning. Pluto / Hades, god of the dead, the underworld. Very interesting. Cool story, bro. It could all just be a lead up, the dog thing, a tell, a warning, as that one commenter said. I would say a warning. Sirius is the dog that warns of the impending flood. So that might even be something too. If anything, Sirius the dog, or the dog star, is associated with floods. Okay, let's move on here. How scammers are using deep fake to impersonate CEO directors during Zoom calls to empty bank accounts. Probably real, but the main thing to keep in mind here is that this deep fake technology wasn't invented recently, and that long before digital deepfakes, you have already been deepfaked and you have no idea, nor do I. We don't know because we can't. You can't get close enough to pull on these faces like they do in Scooby-Doo and unmask some of these people. But I'm not saying that Dr. Fauci is Ellen DeGeneres in a mask, but I do think that Owen Schroyer plays the role of QAnon shaman. But no, deep fakery is standard operating procedure. Rourke66 says, did they even know Pluto existed back in 1776? Right, Pluto wasn't invented until 1930. I think I showed you the picture of Pluto's face on Pluto. All right, let's move on. I want to go through my Twitter feed. Again, I put this on the screen, this image, if you haven't seen it yet. Everyone thinks it's the Twin Towers on fire. But what you're actually looking at is from Futurism.com and their depiction of a burning space station. And I think it's noteworthy because I've been pointing out for about a year now that the space station being the next 9/11 target was forecasted in 2001, A Space Odyssey, and that you can clearly see that it's the same director. And that's what I've been saying too. Okay, so here's something that really adds to that. So you know the scene. I mean, do we call these scenes or are these events? You know the scene where Flight 175 hits the South Tower. You know the scene where the plane goes into the building on TV, even though in person it did not, even though witnesses on the ground didn't see any such thing. And there's quite a lot at ground zero worth deconstructing when you get into the symbolism. I mean, such a major ritual. Really one of the definitive psyops of our lives. So we can never get enough 9/11 deconstruction. And the obvious Kubrick references, and it's bigger than Kubrick, by the way. Just the fact that you have the Millennium Hilton, a big obelisk at ground zero. This is one of the big tells that this thing was a movie. But the 2001 A Space Odyssey has a scene where there's a plane approaching twin wheels of a space station. And it looks very similar in its composition, like the same director, to the scene of Flight 175 speeding to the South Tower. Now again, the significance here is that the same director has written the 9/11 to be, the one that's coming from above. And what's more, on 7/11, and this is significant, on 7/11/2021, Richard Branson took off to space in his space plane, if you remember. 7/11 happens to be the 42nd anniversary of the Skylab falling. So, 42 years after Skylab, Branson launches into space in a space plane. 9 days later, Jeff Bezos goes to space and he launches at 9:11 a.m. And not only does he launch at 9:11 a.m., there's your space plane 9/11 connection, but he launches on the anniversary of Apollo 11. Well, Apollo 11 directed by Kubrick, 9/11 directed by Kubrick, space plane, there's a connection here. I think that the next 9/11 is going to be from space. And then, of course, I can find many examples. I mean, it's not difficult. For example, I'll just off the cuff here, on November the 30th, so you got 11/30/2021. On that day, NASA was on a spacewalk, and they had to cancel the spacewalk citing space debris. Citing debris threat, NASA calls off a spacewalk, 11:30. In orbit, space station, here we go. Astronauts had to call off a spacewalk because debris travels at 17,500 miles per hour. But the thing is, on that day, I happened to be watching a TV show called The 100, and I was on Season 1, Episode 13. So there's your 113 again. 11:3, 11:3 Challenger, 11:3 Apollo 13. These common, these patterns, these common symbols. So this is a coincidence for me, though. On that day, when the NASA had their spacewalk delayed, on that 11:30, I happened to be watching Season 1, Episode 13 of The 100, in which an international space station comprised of 13 segments fractures, falls apart, and crashes to the Earth. Like, what are the odds? And what's more, in that episode, they have a scene down on Earth where there's a bunker. And in the bunker, there's all kinds of art that's been stashed because of the apocalypse. They had to protect it. And one of the paintings is a painting of the Tower of Babel. And I've been saying that Jeff Bezos and the space program, it all represents the Tower of Babel, Amazon, and this ubiquitous quest, all mankind going from Earth into the heavens. So I'm saying that the space 9/11 has been scripted as the Tower of Babel falling. And what's more, if you look at the largest cathedral in the world, the Cathedral of St. John the Divine there in New York, on the pillars, it has 9/11-like imagery that was created, more than 10 years prior. On the pillars, it has the buildings being bowled over by floods, and the whole thing is describing New York as Babylon the Fallen. It's like from Revelation, but New York is Babylon. So the fall of Babel and the tower, the Twin Towers, and now, of course, the replacement tower, if you ask me, this one world tower represents the Tower of Babel in conjunction with the space program, which is connecting the tower here on Earth to the heavens. And then to have the billionaires, the richest on Earth, to go poke their heads up into space, I think it represents a phase or the level we reach in this particular drama. And by the way, I mean there's some numerology worth looking at if you care to go deeper, like the date that Donnie Darko was released, 119. Compare that to Genesis 1:19 about the fall of the tower. I'm going to have to get a mind map out. And I'm always cautious about straying too far without a map to refer to, so you can see that, correlation, causation, two different things, but we're actually deconstructing a story. We're not investigating crimes. We're not reverse engineering factual news events. No, we're actually doing film review, criticism, script deconstruction. All right, let's move on. It's just funny how you can almost predict things. Well, actually, you can. And I'm not the one that believes in astrology and astronomy and all that, but they do. And Pluto is coming back, so Tuesday, keep an eye out. And I think that here's why I have this picture up. So I have this picture on the screen of Tom Brady and Colin Kaepernick. And the significance here, it says reminiscing Tom Brady's shootout with former quarterbacker Colin Kaepernick. So without going too deep into the numerology and their names, which we could, the basic is this: Patriot on the left, Patriot quarterback, and a quarterback just symbolizes in a way, a figurehead or a leader. So you got a Patriot, and then Kaepernick later, far after this picture, but became the de facto face or leader of BLM. Certainly, I would say a de facto leader because of his books that he's published recently and his I Know My Rights organization. My point being, BLM is obviously cannon fodder. It's the front of the Marxist revolution here in America. It's just a carry on of what the Black Panthers are doing. So the fact that you have Kaepernick, leader of a communist revolutionary group, not, I said de facto leader, just like a figurehead. And then on the other side, you have Tom Brady dressed up as a patriot. So you have patriots versus commies. And here's where it gets interesting to me. With patriots, you would associate the number 1776. Well, the commies today, or the Marxists, the revolutionaries, their date, they want to bring America back to 1619. The 1619 Project. Spike Lee's behind this, and many others are behind this idea that we need to go back from 1776 even further, because America actually starts with the arrival of the first slaves via the transatlantic slave trade. So, in other words, you have these two worldviews, two views of America, and it's a perfect schism represented by patriots, commies, 1776, and this Marxist idea of overthrowing Western chauvinism and going towards this global order. But I think the 1619, 1776 is the main split here. And then what's more, look at their numbers. Tom Brady, 12. Kaepernick, 7. 12-7 is the date Pearl Harbor happens. Of course, Pearl Harbor was called Operation AI. AI, which is 19, like September 11th, 19 hijackers, COVID-19. 19 is code. 12 and 7 adds to 19, more code. You could even say that 9/11, they took out Building 1, Building 2, and Building 7. So you've got a 9/11 Pearl Harbor connection here. I mean, this picture really says quite a lot. And it's not a coincidence that the title is Tom Brady's Shootout with Kaepernick. And of course, in terms of the names, you could say Kaepernick has a revolutionary connotation as it's derived from Copernicus. And we got the Copernican Revolution. All right, let's move on. I'm just suggesting that these pictures are more than just to sell magazines or sell tickets. They're telling deep, deep stories. On the screen here, I have a mind map I started working on, and I have a lot more to add to it about the conspicuous use of the number 22, and it really started standing out to me. Well, where would we start? Well, if you remember earlier this year or last year, Saran is going to be released, and then you had John Hinckley being released. We had these themes of assassins being released. In fact, some of the individuals who were, I guess, accused of the Malcolm X assassination were just exonerated recently. A lot of assassins and assassin speak. Like, I thought it was really like code. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that Derek Chauvin was released at 11:22 a.m. Like, they do these things. This is code. So John Hinckley uses the 22. He shoots Reagan. Saran uses the 22 to kill RFK. By the way, RFK, as he died, was photographed by the guy who also photographed the falling man from 9/11. If you haven't seen the falling man picture, it's the guy that looks like the hanged man. The number 22, I mentioned this earlier, Gabby Petito was 22. Then we had Amani 22, died at 22. We had a more recent hip-hop artist I mentioned. The ISS had been up there 22 years. JFK crashed 22 years. Oh, by the way, Colin Kaepernick is on Madden 22. That might mean something. But anyway, the consistent thing here, the 22 has been used consistently in many of these highly scripted events, and they make it a point. Like Isaac Cappy, 42, falls 22 feet. I have a long list, and I'm adding it all together and just kind of pointing out here that these numbers are very significant, and with Amir Locke dying on 2-2, it's pretty clear here. What's the story? I'm not sure, but you can see here that the mind map that we put out here has shown that, at least since last year, this number has been focused on, and this is just the tip of the iceberg here. Jungle Jim says Dane Calloway will put the 1619 business to rest. Yeah, I'd like to know more. If you want to call in, the 1619 project is also noteworthy. I think that it's taken us back to a point where it's very close to the previous Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. Again, I think it's J.P. Morgan said that millionaires don't believe in astrology, but billionaires do. All right, let me go through some more of these, some of my tweets here. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's twitter.com/realtimosman. Tomanoid2 says number 22 is the master builder number. Yes, in fact, there are 22 tarot keys, 0 to 21. You know, like the Fool, the Hanged Man, Death, and all those. Those are very occult. They have a lot of meaning. Each one is associated with a specific Hebrew character. They have astrological significance. But the tarot deck is comprised of the 22 and then also the minor arcana. They have 56. And I was looking at this the other day, and we were talking about this in Discord because there's a discrepancy, and I think we figured this out. Because you got 52 playing cards. And the fact that we all have these or have used these shows you how saturated the world stage is with this astro-theological cult that runs the place and knows what all this stuff means. But the thing is, you have 52 cards, and they represent the 52 weeks in the year. You have the 4 suits for the 4 seasons. You know, you have the clubs, the spades, the diamonds, and the hearts. Yeah, that's just another way of saying staves, swords, pentacles, and chalices. You know, these things are interchangeable. So it's the 4 seasons. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Those are the 4 seasons as well. The Bible. These things are all encoded the same way. But anyway, if you add up all the symbols in the deck, you get to 365. So 52 cards. Then you have, you combine that with the tarot, and it's just the same thing. It's occult teachings. It's an occult. I guess you'd say an esoteric. It's an esoteric system, and it's not meant to be understood by the people who just see the surface images and don't understand the deeper underlying meaning here. And this is typical. If you look at the tarot cards, the numbers, and all this stuff, it's typically encoded into all of the psyops. So people point out like the 33s because these things are kind of obvious. Some of them are very obvious. But other numbers and things we picked up show that no, it's not just about that particular number or that particular god. You can't say the elite are Satan worshipers. No, they seem to worship everything. If the term worship is even appropriate here. Ex-police officer Kim Potter sentenced to 2 years for the killing of Dante Wright. Now again, Dante Wright had the air freshener. That's why they pulled him over. So when I think air freshener, I think of the evergreen tree. But the point was, he was being pulled over because he needed to breathe. He's like, I can't breathe. I need an air freshener. Very common theme here. Tim, space debris article in your voicemail confirmed and identified that Japan is getting rid of space satellites. A few years ago when the space junk stories, when they first started popping up, I actually called a DARPA installation at White Sands, and I said, my friends and I want to start a company where we send into space a compactor, an orbiting trash compactor that uses electromagnetism to bring space junk into its hull, which it will crush, and it will package, stamp, and launch to the moon to be used for future lunar infrastructure. So I came up with the plan to have an orbiting trash compactor that could clean up space and get started on just putting raw materials up there. But they told me that I'm a civilian and I can't. And the reason why? If you touch someone else's space junk, you could cause an international incident. So, yep, we can't get involved in this stuff. Let me go and play this. This is Joe Biden from about a little over a year ago, but just more of this same. Number obsessed warlocks and witches like that.
To lay off 666,000 teachers have been laid off already since March. They've already had to lay off 666,000 teachers. 666,000 teachers have been laid off.
All right, Build Back Better, 666. After the reset and destruction, and there's your World Economic Forum logo with the corona, the sun, the moon, and of course the 666. And even if you don't accept that line through the O's equals sixes, if you're not symbol literate, you have to admit that the O adds to 15, or is the 15th, which adds to 6. So you still have your 666 there. As if Darth Schwab in his Darth Vader in that black cloak isn't enough for you to know, what that group's actually about. Now, what does 666 mean? It's the cult of Saturn. If you ask me, it's the beast system. It's whatever runs this place. But it seems to me that everything that has to do with world government has that number attached to it. Linda Curtis says the clubs also represent the Trinity and spades represent death. Yeah, I'm not too versed on how to read those, but I have seen there's a channel called, I think it's just called Illuminati. It's something Decode. It's an Illuminati Decoder. There's some site that I saw where you can actually go through and find out which particular date is associated with which playing card. So these cards all have a corresponding period of time. This is a Time magazine cover I just photographed yesterday. It says How COVID Ends. And it's just got a bunch of COVIDs, little COVID balls. But the fact that they put that out there told me something's up. And then within 24 hours, they stopped mandating masks in the grocery stores here. Just like that. I don't watch the news like real time. I analyze this stuff, but I don't keep up with the local stuff. So I haven't followed the drama of mask on, mask off. But now I just know it's all off because everybody just figured it out at once. And it's like, am I not tapped into the hive mind? Apparently I'm not. Magazine covers, though. Speaking of tarot cards, magazine covers are the new tarot cards if you want to read the future. And you need no further example than Sharp Power, the new shape of Chinese influence from The Economist of December of 2017. And this is the one that has the Earth as a spiky COVID ball. And again, Sharp Power, easy to understand what that would mean. The fact that it looks like a big COVID, the Earth looking like a big spiked COVID ball. And then, of course, the new shape, well, novel corona, new novel. And then Chinese influence and influenza. So you could take Sharp Power, the new shape of Chinese influence, and this to mean something's coming from China. It's going to fundamentally alter the balance of power, and it's probably going to spread communism like a plague. And look what happened. There are other covers I could point to that go back even further that predict MAGA. Yep. Predict MAGA. I'm going to play a short clip here since we've been talking about Karen and the Kraken. This is Karen M, and the track is called Managers. So just a little bit of context first. This comes from South Pole, which is an animated cartoon series that we at the Infinite Plane Society have been producing. And we're going to ramp up the production of South Pole yet again. We did a full season, had a lot of fun, and we lost our funding because we covered the 1/6 event, but we're going to get these things put back into play very soon here. But this is Karen M, Manager's Manager. This is, of course, by JT33, and I'll put a link in the chat. Be right back.
Yeah, I said, bitch, get your manager, cause I'm gonna damage her. I'm going over your head, you might as well stay in bed, cause bitch, I wanna talk to your manager. She said I'm gonna manage her, and go right to her manager, and her manager's manager, and keep climbing to the manager's manager's manager. I said, bitch, get your manager. Karen M released the crack, and you're never gonna get tired of filing complaints till you're fired. Or I'm retired. Shady.
All right, there you have it. Get your manager's manager and your manager's manager's manager, because Karen M's going cracking. Here's a link if you want to get that track. Again, that's JT33, and expect more from South Pole. The scripts write themselves. They really do. The next one's going to be, I don't want to offer any spoilers. I'll give you one. The lead character in the next episode is Domo the Clown. Domo the Clown. Just something to look forward to. Brojetta says WinStar Casino has billboards in Dallas promoting 33,000 new machines. Sometimes 33 is just 33. But in my observation, if it's out there, it's usually not just that number. These are codes. It's a language. But we live in a world that's encoded esoterically. And that's what the general public is not meant to know. They're not supposed to know how fake things are. Okay, so again, lost rocket that's going to strike the moon on March 4th. March 4th. They should have just waited till May the 4th. They like to play these word games like May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. It's a big Star Wars thing, but March 4th is going to be when China hits the moon. Now, we talked about Apollo 11, 9/11, and Stanley Kubrick. Well, check this out. Project A119, Project Apollo 11 9, or A119, 911 in reverse. It's a combination of A11 and 119, or 9/11. And it makes sense when you look at this. Project A119 came out in 1958, and it was a plan to nuke the moon. So they were going to 9/11 the moon. Again, 9/11, walking on the moon, A11, Kubrick, common denominators. The thing is, the movie Moonfall, and again, Moonfall comes out just as they announce the moon's about to get hit. Moonfall is about nuking the moon. That's a big part of it. All kinds of Kubrick references in that movie. And the actor who plays the scientist hero, like Noah warning the world, like in the other movie Up that Leonardo DiCaprio played, these scientists are these like prophets almost. But anyway, the savior scientist that saves us from the moon in Moonfall happens to be a 33-year-old. What are the odds? Tomanoid2 says March 4th is the new Batman. Okay. No, okay, so we talk about Moonfall, right? Well, on 119, there's that number again, because they said the moon's going to have this thing collide with it. On 119, one of the actors from the movie Moon Knight died in a collision while skiing. So 119, Moon Knight, another moon collision reference. And the Moon Knight is kind of a Batman ripoff, if you ask me. In fact, the guy that dies, he plays the character, I think he's called Midnight Man or something. He's like a villain. So in a way, it seems almost analogous to the death of Heath Ledger before Dark Knight Rises. So Dark Knight Rises, Heath Ledger, Midnight Man, and this 37-year-old who died on 119 impacted Moonfall during a wolf moon. And the character he plays this is really interesting. It's all similar to what we've seen before, but we'll go deeper into this soon. The whole Moonfall agenda as we get closer to March 4th. Let's see, hackers released the names of Freedom Convoy donors. Yep, it's exactly what happened last year to the American right. I think they're being set up for another 1-6. Maybe that's what's going to happen next. Russia moves ahead in the race to dominate space, launching anti-satellite missile systems. All right, let me go to my voicemails here. SpaceX and our space junk problem. Again, it's just amazing to watch these things that didn't exist before. And it's literally magic. I think this might be the definition of magic. You know what abracadabra means? And that's the word of the New Age that Aleister Crowley was all about. It means I create as I speak. And you know what the media does? It creates this reality as it televises it. It quite literally does that. Tomanoid says Moon Knight guy died right before or during trailer release. Yeah, we could say died in quotes. And I looked at the cover art and the imagery of that movie, and it's the one-eye symbolism. Everything else you would expect. I think it might be a parallel. These hero stories are telling stories based on the same set of mythological characters and situations. Batman and Joker in particular have been very useful for the PSYOP entertainment complex to convey a lot of their esoteric messaging. I happen to think Batman Joker symbolizes the dark and the light, Boaz and Jacob the Masonic pillars. I think that would be a big part of it. Joker represents chaos, Batman order. Really, it's the two-headed eagle that you see associated with the 33rd degree, order out of chaos. You see the eagle with the black and the white head. It's Batman Joker. It's a formula. They send out the Jokers. They send out the chaos agent. Wait for a response, problem, reaction, solution. This Hegelian dialectic. They create what they want, their new order, by agitating for it in a very specific way. You send out your Jokers, and then you bring him back in, you reel everything in with the Batman. And so I think it's very significant that before the 2020 riots, before COVID, you had a movie about Joker starting a revolution. Joker, of course, is he has a clown face and he shoots some rich guy. So this is also significant. You have the communist revolution. You have Joker shooting some rich guys, sparking a revolution. Because it says kill the rich on the newspaper, he's reading in one of the scenes. Because he's the clown. He is the clown that is the result of the rich exploiting and the rich using the poor. He's the product of it. I mean, no spoilers, but Joker, it's suggested, might have the same father as Batman. There's something there. But it's making a statement, kind of like a tale of two cities. It's just making a statement here about the the unfairness in society and how Joker's a victim and kill the rich. So this revolution starts where at the end of the movie, the Joker is in the back of a car, gets hit, and then he almost dies, and he seems like he's dead. And they put him on the trunk of a car, and so Joker's surrounded by a mob of people wearing masks. Well, then he stands up after he seemingly dies. Now it's noteworthy that Joker is played by Joaquin Phoenix. Again, Phoenix dies, resurrects. Common thing with Joaquin Phoenix. There are some interesting bits of subtext in every single Joaquin Phoenix movie connecting him to Jesus Christ or the Phoenix itself. And this character, Joaquin Phoenix in the Joker, stands up on the car and he puts his hands to his mouth because his mouth is bleeding, and he uses blood to paint himself his Joker smile. And then he puts his hands out like Jesus, and he's got bloody palms because now his hands are bloody. So they use this Jesus stuff all the time. Jesus, Phoenix, Burning Man. But anyway, then the revolution starts. So a bunch of masked Jokers. Well, then look at 2020. And what do we have? A bunch of masked Jokers burning things down. And I would even go so far as to say anybody that just complied with the masking, to the degree that they complied willingly, were a part of this revolution where they were burning things down. Burning down to build back better. You can find like Heath Ledger burning a pyramid of money. And it's because it's not about the money. They're a better class of criminal, is what he said. Well, a different class of criminal. Well, this is class warfare, communism, burning the economic system. It's not about making money in the system. But anyway, my point being, the Joker movie seemed to foreshadow 2020. So the fact that the Batman is coming out would insinuate to me that we're going to see the opposite side. The pendulum swings the other way. So they released the Jokers, they released the misinformation spreaders, the super spreaders, the DVEs, the domestic violent extremists, the threat actors with their MDM, mal, dis, and misinformation. They've released all the Jokers. Now comes the crackdown. The totalitarian crackdown symbolized by the Saturnian Batman character. Chaos, order. And so I think that's what's coming next. Tomanoid 2 says the new season of Space Force, Season 2, Episode 2, starts out with a couple of 113s. Okay, 2-2 and a couple 113s. Well, the code for 113 is pretty obvious now. And also think about this. The Phoenix. William Cooper talking about the number 13, Aquarius, and the Phoenix and all this stuff. Well, so that tower comes up on 113 after the old towers go down. So it rises up like what? Like a phoenix. So then and this is all phonetic magic. This is word magic. The iPhone 10, and just read it, iPhone X or iPhoenix. The iPhone 10 was released on November the 3rd, 2017. So there you have it. Another example of the Phoenix associated with that date. It's also, I think, noteworthy that that's Kaepernick's birthday. It's also noteworthy that 113 days prior to 11/3 is 7/13. And that date is the date of those historic blackouts on 42nd Street, spaced exactly 42 years apart. The street where Chrisley Christ plunged to her death less than a month ago, and she hit the ground at 7:13 a.m. Again, the date was 7:13, but she hit the ground at 7:13. This stuff needs mind mapping, and we'll get there. We don't want to go too far. Now, I watched this movie the other night. It's called 222. I hope you don't all have 222 fatigue, because it's just going to get worse. And this movie is worth watching. I mean, it's kind of a rom-com, I think. Or maybe it's a horror. I mean, I was laughing at it, but I think it's a horror. But these movies are so corny. When you get used to watching fake news, the even faker movies they just lose all their credit. They just lose all their sense of being believable a lot of the times. But the movie's about cycles of time, time repeating. events repeating and that cycles that need to be broken and how everything is astrological. Yeah, if you didn't get the text alert, your social credit score wasn't high enough to warrant a text alert. No, I'm kidding. We just ran out of credits. Let me put a link in the chat. Go to my Twitter account at the very top. It has a link. You can sign up for text message notifications. So, Pluto rising on Tuesday. Some psycho didn't hang himself. Let me go to my voicemails, and we'll see what we have there. I want to say thanks to everyone who's been calling and leaving voicemails, because we got to get all the intel we can from as many viewers as we can and listeners as we can, and not everybody can call in when we're live, so I appreciate you taking the time. The HBIC says my birthday is 222. Well, hopefully it's not also your death day, or our death day. Not that I expect that. I'm not a doomsayer, and I don't believe you can predict the end. I actually think the world already ended. I'm actually kind of in a good mood most of the time, because I know that the bad part already happened. The world ended in 2020. We're really just in the new age. And that's all it means. The end is the beginning of the next cycle. Here's some more information about the number 13 and why it means rebirth and the phoenix. 13, if you look at it from the perspective of the calendar, 12 months in the year. The new year is month 1, or the 13th month. So the old year dies, the new year is born on the 13th, which is also the first. And this is a peculiar way of coding meaning into these numbers and cycles. You know, there is a logic to it. It's not random when your playing cards are encoded into this entire sky clock we're all sharing. Okay, voicemails. First one. Again, thanks again for leaving these messages. This first one is, I can usually read the transcripts. In fact, let me go ahead and let these render. I'm going to play a quick Chief Crow track. I'll be in about 90 seconds if you want to share the stream. This is Auto Hoax, or GTFO. Okay, hey, my internet is going through some kind of a issue here. It's not playing. So I'm going to be back, though, to take calls tomorrow morning. So thanks, everyone, for joining. I'll get to the voicemails later. And I will return the 24/7 stream to regular operation here also tomorrow. But it does appear that our connection is crashing. Again, thanks, everyone. See you later.
Looking pretty serious, synchronizations, cooking up a terror storm. It was always bound to happen.